Hey guys, this is Jay Calderon with Jay Unboxing here, looking back at this weekend's action, and there was a ton of it, as well as looking forward to some of the fights and news that we have to look forward to in the coming week. So let's go ahead and get into it. For some quick results here, we had some action at the MGM Grand Conference Center in Las Vegas. Oscar Valdez in the fight of the week remained unbeaten, picking up junior lightweight gold with a career best performance, stopping heavy favorite Miguel Berchelt in emphatic fashion in the 10th round. If you haven't seen the fight, go ahead and see it. It's a tremendous fight. Like I said, career best performance and just a phenomenal punch at the end of the fight. And thankfully, Berchelt is okay, passed all the CT scans and everything. So, yeah, go back and see it if you haven't. Also on the card, Gabriel Flores defeated Jason Valdez with a sixth-round KO at junior lightweight action. Solid performance and a win by Flores. Middleweight, Esquiva Falco defeated Artur Akavov with a fourth-round TKO. Broke his nose in the process and seems ready for more in that division. Also, Elvis Rodriguez decision Luis Alberto Veron at 140 pounds. Xander Zayas swept James Martin over 6 frames at welterweight. Middleweight Javier Martinez stopped Billy Wagner in the first, and welterweight Omar Rosario scored a second-round stoppage over Uriel Villanueva. At the SSE Arena in London, European welterweight champion David Avanesyan made relatively quick work of previously undefeated Josh Kelly. The Russian stopped the Brit inside of 6 frames. Kelly had a solid start, but quickly unraveled as Avanesyan applied pressure and just more or less took it out of him in the fifth and sixth round. Very good performance for him, and hopefully some bigger fights with more exposure come as a result of that fight. Also on the card, you had unbeaten welterweights Florian Marcoux and Ryland Charlton battling it out, rather, with the former stopping the latter in the eighth. Marcoux, who was dropped in the sixth, was really picking up steam before Charlton's corner threw in the towel. Correctly so, I might add. Young fighter, has plenty of time to recover, but it wasn't looking like it was going to go well for him. In another action, Gabriel Valenzuela won a 10-round majority decision over Robbie Davis Jr., a good win for him and a good decision. It was a close fight. It could have gone either way, I suppose, but Valenzuela looked like the guy that should have won the fight. And this was at 140 pounds, and Jordan Gill also impressed with a clear decision over Cesar Juarez in featherweight action. And at the Mohegan Sun in Uncasville, Connecticut, Adrien Broner returned to action after 2 years, winning a razor-thin decision over Giovanni Santiago. While the cards weren't particularly close, most felt the fight could have gone either way after the 12th round had concluded, with some even thinking Santiago had done enough. It was closer than the cards had suggested and closer than CompuBox had suggested, with the card suggesting Broner basically won every round and CompuBox suggesting that Broner didn't do anything at all. But those don't really tell the story. The truth is somewhere in the middle there, and a 1 or 2 point win for either guy really probably was acceptable. Nonetheless, a still underwhelming performance from Broner. Also on the card, once beaten Wallen outworked Dominic Brazil over 12 rounds, displaying great speed and skills, and especially for a heavyweight, looked pretty good. And again, it'd be nice to see him move on and try his luck against some of those second-tier and then ultimately first-tier heavyweights. In the opening bout of the televised portion of the show, Robert Easter dominated Ryan Martin over 12 rounds, never getting out of second gear and coasting to an easy, unanimous decision in junior welterweight action. Biggest takeaways from the weekend. I think we'll start with Broner. As a top-level fighter, I think it's over for Broner, to be perfectly honest. I'm not saying he won't get into bigger fights. In fact, I think he will. I think he's probably being lined up for a fight, maybe against a Regis Prograis or a Keith Thurman later this year. That's something that I could see being lined up. But do I think he's going to make any realistic noise in those fights? The answer is no. Barring him catching someone with a particularly good shot, I just don't see that happening. He doesn't even punch through the target much anymore. He's seemed to have lost a little bit of his speed and sharpness. There are glimpses of it, but not enough of it. It just seems like it's not looking great for his foreseeable future. I mean, to make it work, he has to work harder than he is interested in working, and that's ultimately going to be his problem going forward. Now, with some time between the fight, tried to determine exactly what went wrong with Josh Kelly in London. Was it too soon? Is he just not good enough? Those are effectively, it has to kind of be one of those two, maybe a combination of both, but it has to be one of those two at least. That's the majority of the reason. And I think, first, let's credit Avanesyan. He was gracious, confident, a perfect combination of a guy who just comes in, does the job, and does it emphatically the way he said he was going to do it. He said he was going to run him over, and he did it. And you know, he put on a hell of a show and looked smooth as hell doing it, just in the sense that he was so cocksure of himself, which is always great to see in a fighter, much more than a guy who's over the top braggadocious. It's nice for a guy to be like that silent killer, which he really was on the night and in the week leading up to it. However, in terms of the Kelly perspective, I wonder, again, is it because he's not good enough or because it was too soon? My thought on it is, with all of these young Olympians coming in and kind of having that Vasily Lomachenko approach where they reach for world gold as soon as possible, or in this case, European gold, my thought is always maybe they're not going to be good enough, you know? Maybe they're not going to be able to reach the level of a Lomachenko, who in a very short period of time accomplished a pretty decent amount of, he really compiled a decent resume, shall we say, in a short period of time. But not every single fighter is going to be Lomachenko, and that's just not going to work for them. That's not going to work the way it works for a Guillermo Rigondeaux, for example. I don't know if Kelly would ever be good enough to beat Avanesyan or really get outside of that European level. What I can tell you is you wouldn't have hurt his chances if you had give him more time to develop. So whether or not he would be good enough is inconsequential when you think about the fact that he would have had a much better chance if you had just had this fight instead of he hadn't had 15 professional fights. If this would have been his 25th fight, where maybe he'd had a cut and maybe he'd had a guy who wasn't just dazzled by all of his ring antics and his showmanship, and he had found a way to deal with it a little bit better, I think he has a better shot. Again, whether or not it happens is sort of inconsequential. You can say he's not good enough, and that's a possibility. And you can say also that he didn't have enough time to become good enough, and that's a possibility. But one of those could have been helped. He could have had more experience given. And I think that to some degree, that ultimately led to his downfall, because the moment he faced serious trouble and was hurt in that fight, he looked like a fish out of water. Final takeaway here is we're going to go with the fighter of the week, of course, and that's Oscar Valdez in a career-defining performance. You know, before the fight, I picked Berchelt like most people did, I think, and I thought Berchelt was going to be just a little too strong and would struggle initially, but ultimately wear down Valdez, who has been in a lot of wars, and that obviously did not happen. I it's a credit to Valdez for persevering, to having that kind of "I'm going to show you" attitude, which I loved, and it really is just remarkable when a guy who can come in, be built up the way Valdez was, have some people think he's not quite good enough, still continues to win. And now he has, I mean, the world is at his doorstep at this point. I mean, he can have fights with Shakir Stevenson, he can have fights with Gervonta Davis, just so many different attractive, compelling fights where now, I mean, are you going to be the first person to doubt Valdez after that kind of performance? I'm not. And credit, of course, to his trainer, Eddie Reynoso, who has put in yet another solid camp with another solid fighter putting on another solid performance. I mean, great work from the entire team. And it just goes to show you that when a guy is disciplined, he loves the sport. He's in many respects, a polar opposite of someone like an Adrien Btoner, who doesn't work hard, who questions the guys in his corner, who doesn't put in the sort of work, who isn't disciplined. The and still picked up some version of a win, I suppose, on the weekend. Compare and contrast that to a Valdez who does the exact opposite of the things I just mentioned. Does listen, does care about the game plan, respects the person trying to teach him, respects the craft in which he particularly works, and you see the results you can have. You can have a sort of mockery of an event the way Broner did, or you can have a situation where you turn out to be the Valdez in that spot. And credit to him for being class throughout, for caring about Berchelt's health afterwards, for being just a phenomenal fighter and a phenomenal fight. It really was a great performance. Coming up this week, it's Canelo Alvarez fight week, so we will start off there. He's going to be fighting on DAZN against Avni Yildirim in a mandatory matchup for his 168-pound title. This is taking place at the Hard Rock Stadium in Miami Gardens, Florida. Have a prediction coming out for that later this week. Also on the card, Julio Cesar Martinez will defend his world flyweight title against McWilliams Arroyo. Junior Fa and Joseph Parker taking place in heavyweight action, also airing on DAZN. This is at the Spark Arena in Auckland, New Zealand. You have Anthony Durrell taking on Kyron Davis in super middleweight action. This will be airing on Fox at the Shrine Auditorium and Expo Hall in Los Angeles. Stephen Ward will be taking on Kashimbek Kumbakayev, I believe is how you pronounce that. I am sorry if I butchered it, which I almost certainly did. This will be airing on ESPN, and this will be taking place in Almaty, Kazakhstan. I should mention, have a prediction coming out for the Junior Fought Joseph Parker heavyweight clash as well. So be on the lookout for that later this week. Anyway, what were your thoughts on the week? What do you like about the week coming up? Would love to hear from you, of course. Be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at jcalderon_JOB. You can also email me at jonboxing@gmail.com. And as always, until next time.